Welcome. You're listening or watching to the next episode of Whistlekick Martial Arts Radio. And today, my good friend Nick Tabor and I are going to be discussing relationship lessons learned through martial arts. What the heck does that mean? Well, you're going to have to stick around and find out. Before we get there, I want to make sure that all of our listeners know about all of the ways you can find us. You can find us, obviously, you're listening to us either Apple Podcast, maybe, or Spotify. Maybe you're watching us on YouTube. And if you are, you would know that I'm holding up something. I'm holding this up. But you don't know what this is. What is it? Well, if you're only listening, why don't you stop, go to YouTube, and then find this episode on YouTube, and you'll find out that I'm holding up this really cool thing that Nick, look how cool that is.
That is a cool thing.
Yeah.
But that is a really cool thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So go to YouTube, and when you're there, why don't you hit the like and subscribe button on this episode, hit the notification bell, subscribe, so that you can help us out. It genuinely helps the algorithm to help our show get seen by other people, and it really would mean a lot. You also can go to whistlekickmartialartsradio.com. There you can find show notes on all of our episodes, pictures, transcripts, everything you could possibly want to find out about each episode you'll find there. You'll also find a button to subscribe to our exclusive newsletter, which is at the top if you hit the subscribe button. And also, you can go to whistlekick.com to find out about all of the things we do. Maybe you want to find out about some of the events that we host, whether it's free training days throughout the country, or Martial Summit, which is in New England, or maybe you want to go to All In Weekend, which is in Vermont. All of that information can be found at whistlekick.com. You can also find out information on how to purchase apparel, or books, or training programs, or maybe you want to find out about what Whistlekick Alliance is, which is our school owner program. All of that information will be at whistlekick.com. And if you want to help support the show financially, we would certainly appreciate it. Patreon.com/whistlekick and help make this show happen. It really would mean a lot. So, Nick, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic, Andrew. It's always good to see your face and hear your voice, depending on how anybody is consuming this one.
That's true.
Appreciate you always, man. Appreciate you always. If you are listening, I am wearing a very cool thing.
Oh, yeah.
I am wearing a cool thing. So, I have to figure out what that is.
Yep.
Do what Andrew said.
As a good, not a good friend, as a podcast that I listen to, the host says, and I'm stealing this from him. I did not come up with this.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Do it.
Okay.
Yeah. Don't do it. Do it.
Do it. Okay.
Yeah, it works. Anyway, so Nick, you recently wrote an article for Martial Journal.
Yeah.
And I saw this article from Martial Journal, and I said, wow, you know what? That is an interesting topic. And I read through the article. It's like, you know what? This is interesting. This will be an interesting thing to chat about. And your article was marriage lessons that you've learned through martial arts. And we're changing it to be just relationship for this episode because, you know, not everyone is married or not everyone wishes to be married.
Right,
But I thought, you know what? This will be a fun thing to chat about. So, first, how did you come up with the idea to write this article for Martial Journal?
Well, I've been teaching for a really long time, and also I've been in a great relationship for a very long time, right? Right around the time we're recording this, my wife and I are 13 years married. We've been together for 24. So people always ask me, you know, how do you do it? What exactly do you do? What's your secret? There isn't one, to be honest with you. There really isn't. But I just kind of, when I started teaching again, and I had people who started getting into relationships, and these things kind of came up in natural conversation. And then we go, okay, and it hit me over the head. Oh, shoot, this is a story. This is a story, and I started working on that. I put this together, and I've been kind of doing it in different forms. You know, it was a mat chat for a little while, and then it became, became stories beyond that, and then it became the article. But it's been about a year of progress, honestly.
Hmm.
To where it came about, and then I just kind of came up, and now we have the article today.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And your article was marriage lessons for husbands, right? If I'm remembering
right, yeah,
correctly.
yeah,
Right. So we're gonna make it a little more, both sides, right? Doesn't
yeah.
matter whether you're a husband or not a husband, right? There's still advice there and lessons that you've learned. So what was the first where's the first topic we want to go? What's the first lesson?
Well, we could start with the first one. Really listen to your partner. you know and one of the things, a correlation when you're in the dojo in any relationship, I always loved this phrase, I don't matter, we matter.
Hmm.
Where it's not about somebody who would go in, and I was this kid for a little while in the dojo that had that ego and can do a lot of things, but it really became, over time, as I matured more as a martial artist, it became more about being everybody in the group being better.
Hmm.
And of course I improved myself, but one of the things when you listen, when you don't matter really doesn't mean you become worthless. It's about taking the ego out.
Hmm.
And when you're in the relationship that you're in, it really, hey, I brought you flowers, or hey, I got this thing. This is a thing that I did. And, like, okay, they did that, but after a while, it might not be the right thing to do, or whatever you're doing.
Hmm.
If you, like, I use an example of something, like when you're living with somebody, and this is a super kind of draconian example, but you go home and, just your partner just made you dinner, and, what happens? It's your turn to clean,
Hmm.
or vice versa, or something, or maybe you share it, whatever happens. But you got some dishes in the sink, and then you notice your partner's kind of a little irritated, but not saying anything. Like, oh shoot, I've got to go ahead. I've got to take care of that because
Hmm.
other things are not working. So, like in the dojo, we have different walks. We have the rich, the poor. Everybody's equal. Everybody's equal in the school. We play a role in helping the school thrive. We listen to each other to pick up the cues,
Hmm.
so that way
Yeah.
we can help each other thrive.
Yeah, and an example that I was thinking of too. I mean, obviously, listening is a good skill. Period.
Right? Yeah.
Right. It just in general,
Yeah.
open your
Yeah.
ears and listen. And I am reminded of a time when an instructor said to me,
Yeah.
and another student, "Okay, I want each of you to go over there. Each of you pick a side, and I want
Mm-hmm.
you each on your own to work on this form."
Yeah.
Now we're working on the same form, and what he said was, each of you on your own work on this form. And what
Right.
we heard, because we heard what we wanted to hear, which was,
Right.
we're going to get to work together.
Yeah.
But he didn't say that. And he very specifically wanted us to work separately because he wanted to see how well each of us would remember it on our own without having the help of each other. Um,
Right. Yeah.
Not that there's nothing wrong with working together, but we started, we were there working together for 10 minutes, and he came back, he came over. It's like, this is not what I asked you to do.
Yeah.
So, listening is a great, valuable skill for sure. So taking that
Absolutely.
from
Yeah.
your martial arts
Yeah.
school into a relationship, listening is very important. So,
Yeah. And just to add to that as well, when you do listen, there are several cues, but when I think about it, I like it's like sparring as well. Sparring itself, not that I hope you're not in a relationship where it's going to be an actual sparring match, but
hopefully not.
hopefully not. That's not where I'm getting.
If it is, you
But
might want to get out.
yeah, you want to, yeah. But there are times when you do something, even like when we do slow sparring. And for those who have been with All In Weekend, this is a thing that comes up quite a bit. Where you do the slow sparring, but you're picking up on your partner's cues.
Mm-hmm.
They throw something, and after a while, it becomes a dance.
Mm-hmm.
Where things here, if it comes up and your partner has, has a bad foot or has something that may not be working right, then you keep moving in order to keep that going. And now, if listeners or people who are, so you might hear my cat meow here, but she's just wandering around and just wondering what I'm doing and who I'm talking to. So if you hear that's Nudge, that's okay. If you're on YouTube, I might pull her on camera, but we'll see. And she just left. Never mind.
All right. So the next bullet point that you talked about in your article was learn how to deal with conflict. And obviously in the dojo, we often have to deal with conflict.
Right. Yeah. And when you deal with it, it's, again, coming from, the listening thing, it's about taking the ego out. And we don't, it's like, I don't matter, we matter. When you look at it. And when you do have conflict, it's going to happen. It's going to happen with whatever it may be. I'm not going to give an example for that. But it really is, I learned it in the dojo really just to take the ego away. Because a good dojo, it's about everybody. It's about everybody. And I correlate that when I pull that into a relationship advice. I just really say that. That is here, you can't avoid it, but you can prepare for it. You can prepare for it. My wife and I will have the times where we talk about it. Like one of the things, if we had an argument about something, or rather disagreement, would have been about something about money, about paying a bill or something. And then, so often, it'll come to a time where we'll do a check-in with each other and then say, okay, how are we doing? Like, how are the bank accounts doing, or what's going on? And then say, okay, well, I'm going to be spending this, or I just spent this. So that way, when it does come up, we already have the opportunity to talk, because we already know where we are,
Exactly.
And much like everything in the dojo too, you practice for a hard situation to come up. And then when you have that situation, you've already drilled this, you've already drilled this again, because it's not about you. It's about the both of you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now the next point I wanted to get into was your third bullet point was trustworthiness and integrity, but forgetting those buzzwords, right?
Yeah.
The thing that I got that I really enjoyed was that your analogy of people listening, when you get your black belt, you don't stop training. I mean,
exactly.
Okay, let's face it. Some people do. A fair number do, but those that are listening to this podcast probably aren't in that camp. So just because you get your black belt doesn't mean you stop working. If I were single, I'm not, I'm married, but if I were single and I met a girl that I wanted to start dating, right? There's the wooing phase, right? Where we're dating and I'm doing everything I can. Once that other person is my partner, doesn't mean that you stop working to, I don't want to say impress, but you don't stop working on your relationship. I mean, you mentioned because your article is about, marriage. So you said, I believe that it was something to the lines of, when you get your black belt, you don't stop training. So why would you stop working on your relationship after you said, I do?
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, obviously not everyone listening to this will be married, but they will be in a relationship. But the concept, I think, is a really valid one. That you're going to continue to work on the relationship even after you're already an item.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, it's one of the tropes really that I used, and where I got that from, it became, when it came advice, was I used to be a justice of the peace. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't a long career that I did it, but that was one of the things, like, if you're annoyed that your partner is leaving their socks on the floor, or something, you should tell them about that and let it build. And, we don't, and I coached one couple on this, and I said, you both aren't mind readers. You're not going to be able to see that, but you could generally work with it. And again, like, talk about it with each other. And, once we do reach black belt, it's not the end of the road. It's not the end of the road. I'm glad you picked that analogy. That's a really good one. But um, it really isn't the end. You constantly improve upon it. And talking with, a mutual friend of ours a few months back, Uncle Tommy, when I was talking with him, and he's like, "You're married to your high school sweetheart?" I said, "Yeah, I am." Just like, "How do you do it?" I'm like, "We work at it." Like,
Yeah.
we work on it. I mean, and I threw the analogy back at him. I said, "Well, how do you still do what you do, 50 plus years in the martial arts?" And he paused and he went, "I work at it." Like,
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah. There's a great line that I read once, which is that when you're a black belt, it doesn't get easier, it just looks better.
Yes.
But it's not easier. And I think it's the same with the relationships. Like if you've been married, 40 years,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean it's easier.
No.
It looks better. It might look like it's, but it still takes effort. So I think that was really good. Yeah, really good. All right, the next part was I think there were 5 of them, right?
Yep.
And we've done 3. Okay, so what was number 4?
Number 4, well, I'm looking at that. Really working. I'm going to skip one here, but because we kind of went over working as a team. Working as a team, again, 2 against the world. I mean, when life throws punches, and I'm going to read directly from the article here. And I used one of my favorite movie lines from, movie Planet Terror is, it's us against the world. And it's 2 people not fighting with each other, but it's fighting against everybody else as we could, In the dojo, we all wear the same gi. It doesn't matter where we came from. We're all in it together. And you square up side by side, and you take on it as a unit. And when your training partner in class or your spouse depends on you to show up, support them, and then grow with them. So And that.
Go ahead.
Okay. There's a point that I want to say with that is, I learned this from when I was in the dojo. And I mean, I grew up, on paper, I shouldn't have been as high as I am in the martial arts, a kid with cerebral palsy, issues with my body, and stuff that I do. But every time I went in there, and I learned years later, I showed up, I had everything with me, every weapon, my gear, whatever. I was ready to go for whatever. And, people reach out to me on Facebook or somewhere saying, "You know what? I was having a bad day, but I showed up and I saw you coming in ready to go. It lifted me up." I said, "Okay." And then you were naturally a leader for that. I went, "Wow, thank you." And, if you're never going to know, and again, we're not mind readers on this, but when your partner is having a day or something, they're going to need your energy. They're going to need your energy to throw at it. And much like in the dojo, you're never going to know when your fellow partner, your sparring partner, or anybody else is having a bad day. You're going to be able to get in there and be you because you can help them out more than you know.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, the working as a team, like I came at it a slightly different way, but I think the concept is the same, which is, so the last school, actually the school that I'm in now and the last school I was in were both very small schools, right? We're not talking a black belt class of 50. We're talking, 1 or 2 black belts total. And then everyone else are under ranks and maybe 10 students total, right? Very small. And so working as a team, whose job is it to get students in the door and keep them in the door? Well, the small-minded person would say it's the instructor's job. It's the teacher. He owns the school. It's his job. But we know that we're a team. Like I, as a student in the school, not the owner of the school, not the teacher of the school, but I want the school to continue to flourish. Which means I want people to be there. I want people to train with, right? I want to be able to go to class and have it. I mean, yes, it's great if I go to class and I'm the only one. It's a private lesson, but having other partners to train with makes me better. So I want those people to be there. So my instructor and I, we're a team. And all of the students and we are all a team. We want to
Exactly.
keep students
Yeah.
there and keep them happy. And is it my job, quote unquote? No, but it is.
It is. It is absolutely. And I mean, it's something about the word that you say it's your job, where it's
Mm,
just,
mm,
I come at it, it's just me. It's just me too, and that's just not knocking what you said because you were dead on right. But it's just it's me coming at it and doing my thing. And I Kaz and I, my wife and I have this thing of we're gonna be there for each other the best we possibly can. And
mm.
every relationship's not a 50-50.
Sure.
Someday you come in, somebody's at a 10, you're going to do your best to get to the 90, and then vice versa. But,
Yep.
to do
Yep.
what you can, but really just be there for someone, and do what's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And then there was one more bullet point.
Yeah.
Commitment was everything.
Commitment is everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Commitment has been one of the things about really following through. Now, when you're in the relationship about it, there's quiet moments, it's little gestures and things, remembering the favorite place or something, or surprises or whatever, and making time for each other. But it really is following through.
Hmm.
And when I realized this, and I realized one of the things, like, you don't become a black belt overnight. I'm sure there are some nefarious places, if you pay them enough, they'll put one around your waist. But
Sure.
99.99% of the places, you got to earn it.
Hmm.
And, but if you commit and go through it, no matter how much it sucks, it really just, I'm not feeling it today. And, I'm sure you and I have had this. You and I have been at this a long time. Like, I can remember some days, and I had a bad day at school or something when I was a kid, but, it came to the point I gotta go to the dojo. No matter what happened, one kid sat next to me with the flu and I wasn't feeling right, or whatever, whatever it was, but it's like, I'm there. And no matter what, I'm there
Hmm.
regardless. And, so a strong relationship doesn't happen overnight either. It builds over time, and, like, back to where trustworthiness is. The phrase that you can, build up trust takes years and to lose it takes a second
Yep.
or
Yep.
so. You can lose a strong relationship over time by taking people for granted.
Hmm.
You know, by taking for granted, and but with times we do this and we keep working at it or do those things, and yeah, let's be frank, sometimes it's tiring. They do that, but in the end of the day, I know I got somebody at my corner.
Hmm.
And I'm committed to keeping this going above everything else.
Yeah.
Above
The
everything.
the only caveat that I wanted to talk about with
Oh
this
yeah,
particular bullet
yeah,
point
yeah.
is you have to commit. So the bullet point was commitment is everything. And when I first read that, it put my bristles up on edge a little bit. My hackles like, because there are some instances where in a martial arts school setting, you might not have the right, you can overcommit, right? You can commit
Mm.
blindly without asking questions. So I think it is important to recognize that a relationship, a intimate relationship with a partner, and
Mm-hmm.
the relationship you have with your martial art instructor, obviously they're different. They should be different. You,
Oh
eh,
yeah.
we shouldn't be talking about intimate relationships with your students,
No.
but
No.
you have to evaluate when you're with a romantic partner if it's the right partner for you, right? You
Exactly.
could be dating somebody. I'll talk about myself. number of years ago, I started dating a woman who had children, and the relationship was going great. Except I started to realize I am not ready to be. I'm not ready to have kids. I'm putting that in air quotes because they would not have been my kids, but the I
Right,
think
right,
people will
yeah,
understand where I'm getting at. I was not ready emotionally to be involved with someone with kids. And
yeah,
so I had to evaluate, you know what? This is not the right relationship for me. The same is true for martial arts schools. And I
yeah,
think that to me, that's the lesson I think that should be learned from martial arts schools. It is okay to question the martial arts school that you're in. Is this the right martial arts school for me? Because the answer might be no. They might be so jealous of other instructors that you can't go and learn something from someone else, for example. And you
mm,
might want to
mm,
be a student
yeah,
that goes and trains with someone else.
yeah.
And so I just think it's important to keep that in mind as well. That, to me, that was a relationship lesson that I learned through martial arts. It's like you have to evaluate, is this the right martial place for me?
Yeah,
And you have to take that to your relationship. Is this the right relationship for me? Am I getting out of it what I want? Am I able to provide what they want?
absolutely. And I mean, I think at different stages, you're correct. And I mean, when you look at it, you can tell. Sometimes you can tell when you go through it, and I mean, you see some people that go through it. And I've been on this side of the fence more than I was an underbelt now. Where it's like, okay, but it's also, I think, a strength for a teacher is to tell when something might not be a fit as well.
Sure, sure.
Somebody might not be that, and it's good for us. But I think the idea of committing would be from the standpoint when you get to the later side of the relationship. You know,
Hmm.
when you commit and when you do things, it doesn't get great right away. It doesn't get amazing. And I told like one student of mine, one of the first lessons I ever told them was expect to suck right away. Like
Yeah,
it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good. At some point, you're going to be amazing. Yeah, you're going to do great. But don't forget where you came from either.
yeah,
Where you
yep,
came from. That's a good addition too. I really like that. All right, I thank you for that.
yeah,
I really
absolutely.
do. Yeah.
Um, so Nick, thank you so much for coming on. Like I
Oh
said,
man, my
I read
pleasure.
the
Yeah.
article and was like, oh, you know what, this would be a fun episode to do. And so
Happy to
what
help,
a
man.
uh,
Yeah.
Jeremy and I could have done it together, but I thought, you know what, Jeremy didn't write the article. Nick wrote the article. So let's bring Nick on and chat about it. And if anybody is interested in writing their own articles for Martial Journal, you certainly can do that. Go to martialjournal.com to find out more information. Nick,
Absolutely.
did we miss anything from your article?
No, I just want to add one more point to it for what we had and us finding the last line. When you ask yourself for a moment, what kind of partner do I want to be and how am I showing up to become that?
Mm,
It's always a good way to ask it. And again, adding to your point with commitment, the more you know yourself, the better you're going to be. And if you take care of yourself, the better you're going to be in the long run together.
yeah,
So,
awesome.
yeah.
Nick, thanks so much for being here. Appreciate you. Absolutely.
Appreciate you too, man. Appreciate you too.
For all of you listening or watching, you get to see the cool thing that Nick's wearing and the cool thing that I'm holding up. Yeah. If you did make it this far, comment in the comment below what the cool thing was that I'm holding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
what's the cool thing that I'm wearing?
That's right. So if you made it this far, do that. Hit the like and subscribe button. Smash that notification bell so you know of every episode that comes out. whistlekickmartialartsradio.com for everything on all of our episodes. Over 1,030 episodes at this point. Whistlekick.com to find out all of the things we do. And until next time, train hard
Smile.
and have a great day.